Good morning. So today I want to talk a little bit about boundaries, specifically familial boundaries. And the reason for this is something that me and my husband are figuring out, and friends of ours who recently got married are also figuring out, and everybody with the family is figuring out. But it's something that comes up a lot in your life as you continue to grow. When you stop being a teenager and you become an adult, there's different boundaries, different lines within your family. You're not so much a dependent anymore. If you move out, you still have a relationship with your family, but there's different positions in your life. So they're no longer your caretakers, but they're still your parents and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about it because it's a very difficult time and subject to talk about and to handle, because it's really difficult to tell your family no and to also set very strict boundaries because it can be taken the wrong way. So us, for example, my family lives about 3.5 hours away, so they're not always here very frequently, but we all have our own set of boundaries on what it comes to, and a lot of it comes from your house, your rules kind of thing, but at the same time we have a clear understanding that my dad specifically doesn't like certain things, and he's not afraid to leave because those are his boundaries. These are the things that he will not kind of go along with, or if he's not comfortable with it, he'll just leave. And he won't be upset or mad. Those are just his boundaries. That's where he set things up. And they come up in different ways, just kind of how he is. So that is something that we know and we work with. We say, okay, well, this is what he's comfortable with, this is what's okay. And when they visit, like me and my sister who don't live at home anymore, we keep that in mind. And it's the same thing with, if they're in your house, then they have to kind of follow your rules to an extent. So there's the boundary there of, well, this is the way we do things, and this is kind of the way it works, and they're usually asking. And for the most part, my family's pretty flexible since we all kind of still do a lot of the same things that we did at home. And then there are other cases where your family is very pushy and there all the time and very, very in your face all the time, because that's just the way it's always been. Or they control your vacation because they're entertaining you, or they come over unexpectedly. And there's a lot of different things that can happen, and you might be okay with that because that's the way your family is, but you might not be okay with that, especially if you've married into somebody else's family and it's different than yours. So while I feel like my family's boundaries and everything are pretty okay and normalized, I'm really comfortable with it because I grew up with it, my husband might not be. And so I always try to take the time to talk to him about it if they visit or before we go visit, and say, okay, what do you need? Where are your lines? What are your boundaries? And make sure to let him know that he needs to talk to me if he needs something. Like if he's feeling tired because he's more introverted and wants to just stay in bed longer, to let me know so I don't go bug him while he's doing that. And different things like that we try to talk about, so that way we don't get over exerted or stressed out while we're visiting or while our family is visiting. And I try to do the same for him with his family, because while I'm pretty okay with most of it, it's different than mine. I have moments where I'm like, that seems a little intrusive, or that's a little different, or I don't know if I like that very much, and just kind of looking at it very differently than he does because he grew up with it. That is the way his family dynamic is, but that's not how mine is. And so it's unusual to me, and I have to figure it out, and I have to navigate it, and I have to figure out, okay, did I misunderstand this? Is this just the way it is? Am I not comfortable with this? Is this okay? Did it just shock me? And I have to kind of process the give and take of it. And for the most part, I'm pretty flexible, so I'm like, okay, I kind of let most of it go. But different things like holidays, the way we celebrate them, or how often we go see them, and things like that, I will be a little bit more vocal on it if I'm not comfortable with it, or I want to spend more time at home, just us, or if I want to go see my family and things like that. So we are sure to discuss it because we like to spend all of our time together. So it doesn't make sense to say, like, okay, well, I'll see you when Christmas is over, and then leave to my family, and he stays here with his family. Because now that we're married, we are our own family. So it's something that we have to talk about and go over. And just because I'm very comfortable with my family doesn't mean he's very comfortable with my family. And because he's very comfortable with his family doesn't mean I'm comfortable with his family. But we do have to figure out how to make it work for both of us. Whether that's changing things up, taking breaks, setting different boundaries, having talks about, okay, well, this is okay and this is not okay. And doing that, it helps us to figure out which boundaries are going to work for us. And sometimes we find things that are in each other's family that the other doesn't like. So when we got married, there was talk about us watching one of his brothers in case, because they were going on a family vacation, he might not want to go, or he was going to have a job or something. Either way, we might end up watching him. And I thought that was okay. And I was like, I don't mind. That's fine. It's pretty okay with me. But he was kind of on the fence about it. And then my mom chimed in and said, there's a newlywed rule. I've not heard this rule before, but I'm also the first kid to get married. So she said this newlywed rule was that for the first year of marriage, nobody can ask us to do anything. Which is very unusual. I don't know, I've never heard it before. I don't think I've ever heard it mentioned before. But I thought that was really weird. I was like, but I don't mind. However, my husband jumped on that and said, nope, newlywed rule. Nope. I'm not doing anything but sleeping in bed all weekend. I was like, okay. Not the extreme I wanted to go to, but okay. And so sometimes that happens where maybe I'm not as familiar or comfortable or not all for some of my family's ideas, but he is, and vice versa. So it's very interesting and fun figuring out your boundaries. But we have tried to make it very clear to each other what our boundaries are, so that when something new comes up, or we're out and something comes up that is against boundaries we've already talked about, or is along the lines of something we've already talked about, we can respond accordingly. So if, like, my mother-in-law mentioned that my hair I'd cut it too short, which I don't really care, but if it was something that bothered me, he knows, so he would step in and say, oh, well, either defend me or say that he liked it or whatever that needed to happen. Personally, I don't really mind. I've got, close to the longest hair in my family still, so it still feels really long to me. But things like that we talk about, so when it comes up, we're prepared for it. I can never think of things that relate to my family because I forget. But I'm sure when we go to my parents' house, he's got things that come up that I just say, oh no, that's just not how we do it, and just move on. But we've already established certain boundaries and things that are okay and that are not okay within our families to make it so that everything will be fine. I remember when I was younger, I used to tell my parents, and they used to tell me as well, that whoever I wanted to get married to needed to be my first priority. And at the end of the day, what mattered was how I felt about him. So, for example, if my husband didn't get along with my family, or my family didn't like him, and I had to choose between them, I was essentially expected to pick his side. And if I couldn't pick his side, then there was a problem in our relationship. And there was that expectation that he comes first and then my family, because he would essentially be starting my new family, which is, you become parents, have kids, get married, all of that good stuff. So that needed to be a priority, which helped to understand getting a good relationship, and that's a whole nother topic for a different day. But it essentially established that I needed to pick his side when things like this came up. So when his boundaries were getting pushed with my family, I needed to make sure that I was on his side and I defended him and helped him out if need be, and vice versa. And we've been pretty good about establishing it, but I've seen a lot of friends and family that aren't as good or don't understand or didn't think about it. Because let's be honest, not everybody thinks about, no, but my family's fine. Or if your partner says, that was a little rude, or I don't know, they're being really sarcastic, and you're like, no, that's just my family. They're always like that. And we dismiss when their boundaries are being pushed because it seems normal to us. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it is such a big issue that can cause a lot more problems if you ignore it. So one thing could be, we've had friends who their family shows up unannounced because that's their family. And I've seen it a lot of different times, and there's different ways this could go. So if they show up, everybody's okay with it because this is normalized and everybody's okay and nothing goes wrong, and everything's fine and normal and everything's okay. The other way it goes is her partner might not be okay with it, or she might not be okay with it. And even though it's her family or his family, they aren't comfortable with that because of the fact that they're pushing their boundaries. They're not comfortable. They like to plan ahead, and maybe they don't like the spontaneousness. Or maybe they did plan ahead and they cancel their plans, and there's a lot of boundaries that get messed with and comfort zones that you can kind of rub up against that create very tense environments and make it really difficult to be okay with. So this friend, their family came over and her partner wasn't okay with it. He was just a little upset because we had already had plans. We were hanging out and everything, but then this happened. And it's not always okay, and for the most part it was like, it's what happens. This is the way that her family is, and he's kind of accepted it. But you could tell that it was still a little frustrating, and it wasn't just him, but to see that happen, to me, if my family were to do that, my first instinct is to mute the phone and be like, family wants to come over, is that okay? Not okay? Yes, okay, not okay. And get a clarification. And if I'm with friends, it's like, I just naturally go to cancel because I hate canceling on people. Or I ask them if it's okay. But I always have to make sure that I'm okay with it first. So if I want it to happen, if I don't want it to happen, then I say, okay, you know what? They want to come over? I'm okay with that. Then I ask my partner, hey, are you okay with that? Yes, no? If it's a no, I always call back and say, no, not today. It's not good. Let me look at our calendar and I will let you know when the next good time is. Because I'm not going to push his comfort zones and his boundaries just because it's our family norm. Because we have to respect each other's boundaries. And so, let's say he says yes, and then I ask my friends, and they're like, well, we were really looking forward to just spending time with you. That's a no. It might not sound like it, but it is a no. So, same thing. We're actually out with friends right now, and we already promised them that we'd spend time with them. Let's look at the calendar and pick another day. And another thing we have to understand is when that happens to us, when we're on the other end of that phone call that's being told that we need to reschedule, you have to learn to be okay with that. It's not an offensive thing. It's not, I just didn't want to spend time with you. It's not that we don't like you. It's simply that we want to make sure that the people that we're with are comfortable with that. And sometimes spontaneous things, which I've known a lot of people who like to spontaneously pop by, are not always welcome. And you have to understand that it's not an insult against you. It's simply not something that they were comfortable with. And if I'm in the middle of doing something, like when I was remodeling our kitchen and somebody decided to stop by unannounced, or call and be like, hey, I'm going to head over and do something, and I'd say, I can't. I'm busy. It's not that I don't want to spend time with you. It's that I've already promised my time to something else. And that has to be my priority right now until I'm done. And I can say something like, how about you give me a couple of hours or call me in a few hours to see how I'm doing. If I'm done, then I'll go with you. If I'm not done, then I need to finish. And we'll have to reschedule it for another time. And it's not that I don't want to spend time with you. It's that I've already scheduled my time elsewhere. And you have to be respectful of those boundaries. So instead of getting offended, you can say, okay, well, let's schedule it next time. I'll text you the next time I'm in the area. Or I'll call you back and see if that's okay. Or you can even offer to come help if they still if it's something like that. Like, I would have said, well, I mean, you can come sit in the kitchen and stare at this, but I'm going to be working on this. Or if I'm not comfortable with that, saying, no, I would really rather just do this by myself. Whatever they say, we have to stop taking it so personally. Because I've seen people, well, they said they didn't want to, and then they start to blame people, like, oh, well, maybe it's because their spouse didn't want to hang out with us, or their partner didn't want to, or their friends aren't that good of friends. And it's not that. It's that we're trying to respect the people that we're with and the time that we've already promised to other people. And it's not a personal attack on you. Maybe if you'd have done that another day, it would have been okay because they were by themselves, or they were happy to, or they'd already gotten set up. But the way things were, they just didn't necessarily want to, but because they hadn't quite set up that boundary with them, it was seen as okay. And the next thing is, if let's say you've never put up these boundaries before, but it's time. So you sit down, you talk about it and say, these are where our lines are, this is what's okay, this is what's not okay. And the next time it comes up, same thing, they come over that, let's come and hang out, and this time you say no. It's very easy to feel like, especially if they push back, to say, oh, well, maybe, okay, well, you know what, maybe I was making a big deal out of this, and just let them come over. Because you've already done it before. But here's the thing. Just because a situation has happened before doesn't mean it has to happen again. I shared that consent is tea video, and it kind of applies to a lot of things. If, let's say, I invite all of our friends over to the house, and my husband's okay with it, we have a great time, and then I want to do it again, I can't assume he's going to be okay with it. I have to check in with him again and say, hey, is this something that's okay? He might say no because he's had a long day at work, or he wanted to get other things done, or he was just looking forward to quiet time, which are things that he needs that I don't necessarily need. But that might be a different situation then. So then I have to say, okay, well then I won't do that. Instead of saying, well, you were okay with it last time. That was last time. This is this time. And it's something that I feel like we've gotten away from previous years, where it used to be like you were always ready to entertain and you always had to be okay with family and you always had to do this. And we're starting to push back because we're living in a very high-stress time. There's social media, there's cell phones, there's computers and internet and everything that's always in our face all the time. And it's very easy to be overwhelmed by all of this. There are workplaces that expect you to work 24/7 but only pay you for the 40 hours. So we have to start setting boundaries. And this applies to everything under the sun, but I want to talk specifically about families because it comes up a lot. Also, my family just visited, and I had to ask my husband, say, hey, they were planning to stop by and hang out. Is that still okay? Because I'd mentioned that they might be stopping by, and he said it was fine. I had to check in again. Hey, my family wants to come by and visit us. Is that okay? Are we okay? There's nothing wrong with that? Are you feeling okay? And he said, yeah, no, it's fine. They can come over. Just, I want to make sure. And he gets his checklist out, and every time family or somebody comes to visit, it's like clean the floors, do the dishes, clean the sheets, all of the little check boxes. But I checked in with him, and it was okay, and they've come, they've left, and we had a good time, and nobody felt uncomfortable because of that, because we'd already discussed it, and everybody knew it was okay, and everything was fine. As opposed to if I hadn't asked or told him and he felt like it wasn't okay. And it can help avoid all of these uncomfortable situations if you just take a minute to talk about it and to set up these boundaries. And this applies to everything, like I mentioned, work, different charities, churches, things like that you are promising time to. You have to set boundaries. If you're helping a friend out because they're having a hard time, you have to set boundaries. Maybe you're okay with helping them buy groceries, but you're not okay with them sleeping on your couch. Or you're okay with them sleeping on your couch, but not eating all of your food and using your Wi-Fi and not doing anything. That's a boundary. If, your family wants to come over and stay over and you're not okay with that, that's a boundary that you have to set up. Maybe your work expects you to be giving 110% all the time, every day, even the days that you're not supposed to be working. That is a boundary, and it has to become a norm that it's okay to set them, that it's okay to say, I can't work like this, or I can't just let people come over all the time. I need my own personal time. And a lot of the times we see that we're being selfish, or we're not caring as much, or we're being very stingy with our time. No, we're just taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're not straining relationships. We're making sure that every time your friend comes over, that you're happy to see them. Not like, well, I was busy and I was doing something else and now there's a little tension there. Like, no, we want to maintain healthy relationships and good relationships that we're comfortable with. And it doesn't mean we're being selfish. It means that we're taking care of ourselves. Thanks for listening.